So modern day GPUs are big and produce a lot of heat. Some have 1 to 2 fans, some have 3. This RTX 3060, which isn't a particularly powerful card, is a WindForce edition because of just how many fans it has. It has 3. But what if I told you I found a GPU that was passively cooled and 12 years old? This is a card by ASUS that has 0 fan on it and just a big heatsink and is a GT610. This is an old card made for office desktops. As said, this card is only passively cooled, with this being the heatsink, which is not as condensed as you would think it would be. There is no fan to be spoken of. GT610 came out in 2012 in April, so 12 years old this GPU is. And today I want to see how it'll do. Does it hold up today? And how much power can you condense into a card with no fan? I'm going to chuck it onto my test bench and let's find out. The GPU is on the test bench. It's an open air bench. Testing the machine now. Now, honestly, this will have a slight disadvantage due to the fact that there's no passive airflow from case fans. The GPU is working, it's not too hot yet, and Windows is booting up. Now this is an old card and an office card, so I'm not expecting amazing gaming performance, but it's not hot yet, which is why a lot of modern GPUs, like again this RTX 3060, because they have such big heat sinks, which is, this one's massive compared to the GT610 one. When they're just on Windows, for example, most of them will actually shut themselves down. Fans wise, the fans will turn off and will only kick up once it's actually hitting a certain temperature. The more you know. I've got 3D Mark open, and let's run a benchmark or two. The first one I'm going to try is Time Spy, because that's the one I usually run, but I honestly doubt it'll make it through. The heatsink is still cool enough that I can touch it, and touch it comfortably. We're sitting pretty nice right now, but let's see how we go during this. So the demo is loading, the GPU is still pretty cool. Okay, Time Spy is now running, and I mean running barely. It's like 1 frame a second, if that, and instantly the heatsink is heating up very fast. Let's see if it can make it through this Time Spy. But it's getting hot pretty quick. The test has now been running for a bit, and that heatsink is really hot. But let's just wait until the end. Let's see if it manages to make it through. And our final score on Time Spy is 97 with a graphics score of 83. That is pathetically low. Our heatsink is now very hot to the touch. And if we look at GPU temperature, admittedly, if we look at GPU temperature here, the absolute highest it got was 70. That's, you know what, that's not horrible. Not great, but it's not horrible. The main thing I noticed is that it rises, it doesn't fall. And so even in the CPU test, it doesn't really get lower, it gets higher, which is strange. But I will tell you, that score is pathetically low. But that's the passive cooled GT610. Let's also quickly run Fire Strike, as well as Skydiver. Fire Strike is running. Here's the Fire Strike score. Let's do Skydiver. Running it now. And then with that, that's our Skydiver score. Not, okay. I'll admit, all the scores are pretty bad, but that's not real world performance. Let's try running an actual few games. Normally I would screen record on the machine. I'm not going to be able to do that here because I don't want to affect the performance. We've got Portal 2 running. The GPU is at 100% and the FPS is at 15, which is kind of pathetically low, especially for an old game like Portal 2. Not very good. And it's sitting at about 67 degrees Celsius, but it's very slowly climbing. But you know what? I'm pretty impressed with the temperature of it, especially considering this is an open air test bench and there's no case fans pushing air through it. But Portal 2 is getting literally like 15 FPS, 18 average. Not very impressive by the GT610. Let's try Skyrim, shall we? Now, Skyrim is an old game. Admittedly, it's 3D, but it is old. GPU is at 100%. Again, the temperature is actually impressing me, but we're getting 5 FPS with an average of 10, which is not very good. You can see it as I turn around. It's not running it well. I tried to run something a little bit more intensive, which was God of War 2018, but that didn't even start running. Similar story of Baldur's Gate 3, I couldn't even get it to start. And so this GPU, while passively cooled, not very impressive specs wise. So admittedly, it's 12 years old, but this passively cooled GPU is just not very good. 12 years old, passively cooled, it'll get basic desktop applications run, but when even this GT630 is surprisingly a lot faster with just 1 fan and a much smaller heatsink, the cooling isn't very good. 1 fan and even a smaller heatsink than that would be far more adequate. But let's talk about why this can be cooled passively. Generally, the faster a GPU is and the more power a GPU is using are the 2 factors that contribute to how hot a GPU will run. The GT610 is only running at 29 watts, which, spoiler alert, is ridiculously low. And so even without fans cooling down the heatsink that it has on it for passive, it's honestly fine. If you're trying to build like a dead silent build that is just for desktop work, honestly this GPU could still work. This 12-year-old GPU passively cooled is just simply not good. There are some 12-year-old GPUs that can still game today. This is not one of them. The more you know. I still thought it'd be interesting to look at, especially because I got it for $10 AUD off Gumtree. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'm a small tech channel, it would help out a ton. I hope to see you in the next one, and bye bye.